Good afternoon, class. Sai Sensei here again, giving you another PvPoke usage lesson. Today, we're going to be looking at team building. So get your notes ready because it's time for a lesson. Just a quick reminder, if you want a better grade in class, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to see what I do in advance, check me out on twitch.tv/Super Science Sensei. See you there! A lot of people when they team build, they just look at what is the best threat score, and then they think about like, oh, if it has a low threat score, it must be good. Or if I make my threat score as low as possible, my team's gonna be the best possible team in every situation. But that is not the case. I know there's a lot of players out there that enjoy spicy picks, and if you want to make a team with spicy picks, I'll even show you guys how to do that according to your needs. Usually, when you make a team, we click at rankings because, well, let's just say you don't know what you want to use for your team yet. You're looking at Premier Cup, and you're gonna look at, oh, well, since I don't know what's good yet, I'm just gonna use the top meta mon and then build my team off of that. You can do that if you want, especially if you have them on, because it might be a good idea to do that. But let's say you put in for your team builder, Master League, Premier Cup, you put in Metagross. No, when you put in your Pokemon, you can change up the Pokemon stats and IVs to match the one that you will use. You can, so that, let's say if you have a best buddy Hundo Metagross, you guys could put it as a level 41 Hundo Metagross because it will affect some of the values. You guys can put the moves you plan to use. So let's say you're using Bullet Punch, Meteor Mash, and let's say, oh, I don't want to use Meteor Mash, I want to use Earthquake. That's fine too. You can change your moves, and it will definitely affect which Pokemon you have. So let's say if you wanted even a great use of this tool is if you wanted to compare Metagrosses with each other, you guys could change the moves, put both of them on the same team, hit rate team, and then when you look down, you'll see if any of the matchups switch. So our first Metagross, the one with Psychic, is able to beat Gyarados, but loses to Empoleon, while the one with Earthquake loses to Gyarados, beats Empoleon. And then later, when we look at this battle histogram at the end, you'll notice that the one with Psychic loses 40 matchups, but the one with Earthquake only loses 45 matchups. So this one, because it has a higher loss rating, this is the one that they suggest to us, this Bullet Punch Meteor Mash Psychic variant. Now, this doesn't mean that this is always going to be the best Metagross. You have to figure out what moves you need for the team that you build, and we'll talk more about that as we go forward. Now, a few things to note before we progress. There are four major parts for the team builder. The first one is overview. So overview is something they added really recently, and it shows you a evaluation of your team. So this thing is nice because it tells you what your team might be missing, what your team might be lacking, and what your team might need to be successful. Okay? So, for example, uh, if we look, obviously, with only one Pokemon in, our coverage is going to be a failing grade because coverage, you only have one Pokemon, you're not going to hit multiple things. There's no singular Pokemon that's going to give you an A rating right away. But Metagross, as far as Premier Cup goes, is pretty bulky, meaning it doesn't need to use shields all the time. It's pretty safe because there are very few things that can beat it, and it has high consistency because it has good damage with Bullet Punch, and Meteor Mash is a low energy, high damage move. Okay, so as you build your team, these values might change, but I want to clarify these values right here are not the most important thing. You can have teams that run multiple C's and D's or whatever in here, but still be a viable team as long as you play it correctly and it matches your play style. This is a good place though to look to see if your team's like, oh, if the safety is low, that means your team is very rock, paper, scissors. If your bulk is low, that means you might depend too much on your shields. If consistency is low, that means you might rely too much on the big moves hitting, so you're going to need a bait. So that's what these things tell you. And obviously, coverage is low. It tells you that you are not hitting enough types for neutral or effective damage, right? So these are nice what's the word for it? They're nice points to work off of, so they're good standards to look at. But this is not the be all end of all of your team. Okay, if your coverage isn't the greatest, that's okay as long as you can hit everything mediocrely. If your team isn't the bulkiest, that means you have to be extra careful with your shields. And if you're really good with your shields, then this should be fine. If your team lacks safety, that's the gamble you play yourself, right? There are a lot of teams out there that are very very rock paper scissors. There are a lot of teams out there that are very like, one-sided, but they can work very well, especially in GBL because it is a blind pick. And finally, consistency, right? Do you have to bait a lot? Are you good at baiting? Do you know how to count? Can you count that? Those are things we look at for overview. So hopefully you guys understand that it has a lot of use for figuring out what your team lacks and what your team is good at, but it does have issues with telling you how good your team is. Just because you have A's all across doesn't mean it's a great team. Just because you have B's or C's all across doesn't mean it's a bad team. Okay, so that's overview. Let's look at meta scorecard. Okay, the meta scorecard is one of the coolest and best things about the team builder. When you guys look at the meta scorecard, it tells you a some of the pretty common-ish Pokemon. Sometimes though, there are a few Pokemon that aren't really that common that will leak into it. Like if you guys do this for Ultra League, you guys or Great League, you guys will see Regirock every once in a while, and Regirock is kind of like no one uses Regirock, right? But we still it's nice because for the ones that are the most important, like for example, Metagross is really big, Togekiss is really big, Dragonite's really big. For these three right here, we look at look at that, we have good matchups there. And my personal favorite use of this scorecard is to make sure that for every big threat you expect in the meta, you have two or more answers to. Okay, we'll talk about that in just a bit, and it's gonna be a key thing on making a team work out. Okay, in case you guys don't know what these little dots mean, so if it is this blank middle circle with a little dash line, this means that in general the matchup is like a tie. It's a toss up. It's pretty even. Both of them are gonna die really bad. No one has a great advantage. Now, if it's a blue circle, that means the opposing Pokemon will win. So instead of Metagross versus Garchomp, Garchomp is gonna beat you down. Against Metagross versus Swampert, Swampert gonna beat you down. Now, another if it's purple, that means the Pokemon that is on top is gonna win. So Metagross is gonna crush Togekiss. Metagross is gonna crush Dragonite. It's a little bugged right now. This should be even, but we'll just let it be. The main thing to understand though is that all these assume a one. Oh yeah. Also, the reason why you have X's here is because they are assuming that these guys are level 40 and have a single shield use. Okay, so all these matchups are all based off the idea that both people will use one shield and everything's level 40. Because we put in our numbers as 41, that's why our Metagrosses here are going to beat this Metagross right here, which is level 40, because it has higher attack, higher defense, and a little bit more HP. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, now that is what the meta scorecard is useful for, and we're going to get into greater detail on how we use that. Let's look at potential threats. Potential threats is, in my opinion, one of the most important things to look at inside um, when you're making your team. And the reason why I say that is because when you are making your team and you look at their meta scorecard right here, it tells you what can destroy your team. Now, obviously, it's not good with Metagross. Let's put a different Pokemon here. Let's put Dragonite, just because I personally love Dragonite, and I have a good Dragonite, and I use Dragonite inside Master League as well. So I don't want to invest too much dust, so we're going to put Dragonite up in here. So now, when we look at this, right, we look at the potential threats, right? Metagross can beat Dragonite. And obviously, because it's level 4, if I put my best, but no, I want to put this as a non-best buddy just to make it fair and give me the numbers I want to see because I don't know who I'm going to best buddy yet. Right? Metagross beats Dragonite. Right? Magnezone can beat Metagross, but it loses to Dragonite. Togekiss loses to Dragonite, gets hard beat by Metagross. And you see how it tells me what are the biggest threats to my current squad. Okay? Potential threats is really useful because it tells you what you need to be careful for and will actually be the deciding factor of what we use for our next part of our team. Okay. Now, the one thing that a lot of people look at when they do look at the team builder, the only thing that a lot of people care about is this little part right here, which is the threat score. Now, I want to clarify, threat score is amazing, but it's not the be all end all. Threat score tells you whether or not like one single Pokemon can sweep your entire squad. The lower the number is, the better your team is. So the lower this number can be, the better your squad will be. Okay? Now, the problem is that if you guys just use this right here, you guys could find yourself in a sticky situation because you guys might have a threat score that might be low, but if your top threats happen to be the most common things in the meta, then your team's not good. Does that make sense? Because if the top 3 things are super, like I like to say the top 10 things. If we look at the top 10, if on this list are super common meta Pokemon, then that means the team is really weak to the meta, meaning even if our threat score looks low, we're going to get thrashed when we actually play. And so that's why we had to figure out what we use. Now, the final thing that's available inside Team Builder, ignoring the battlegrounds and defensive typing, offensive typing, which I think these ones kind of speak for themselves. It tells you what you hit hard, what you get hit by hard, and this just tells you what each Pokemon kind of wins and loses against. Is potential alternatives. Potential alternatives is nice because it will suggest what you can add to your team to beat the threats that are here. Now, the thing about this section, I like it because it does show you what you can use, especially if you're looking for a spice pick. Because if you look at this, you're like, oh man, Magmortar, I could use that. You can put it into your team. But I'm going to show you why this is not always the best way to devise your team. Because if I put this into devise your team, let's say I put Garchomp in, right? Because this is the #1 top pick for potentials. This is my squad. I hit rate team. I look at my overview, A, B, C, A. So that means there's some unsafe matchups here. I look at the battle scorecard. Wow, that looks pretty good. You see that? Most of the things have a bunch of purple X's on top of it. We are a little scared of Togekiss and Dragonite, though. Then we look at our potential threats. And here comes our issue. Yes, our threat score is a very, very low score of 506. But we run into the issue of having a very, very bad matchup against Togekiss, very bad matchup against Glaceon, Beartic, Gardevoir, Lapras. If you guys look at this, right, considering that Togekiss is super, super, super popular is going to be super popular in Premier Cup, this means that if they have a Togekiss in the back and they wipe out our Metagross inside the lead matchup, like, getting close to beating it or even, like, can actually beat it, we automatically lose the matchup right there. So Togekiss in the back, this team loses right away. So that means this is not a good team. Can you use it? Sure. But if you bleed with Metagross and Togekiss in the front, you lose the match. So this is the reason why using this potential alternatives is not the best way to do things. So what is the best way to do things? Well, I'm going to show you guys how to build for your team. So let's look at this Metagross Dragonite situation. I have both of these as Pokemon that I can use right away. Right? I look at my rating, and this is what I'm going to do. Instead of looking at potential alternatives, I'm going to look at the meta scorecard and the potential threats to make another team on what I consider to be the scariest in the meta. So if I go Team Builder, I go inside Master League, I put Premier Cup, right? And let's look at Pokemon that could be a threat to us. Well, first off, Metagross is a threat. I don't want to lose to Metagross, so I will put that right there. I look at this squad. Togekiss, even though Metagross handles it, I want something that has a mediocre matchup against Togekiss. Because obviously, if it goes up against Dragonite, Dragonite's going to have trouble. So we're going to put Togekiss up in here, right? Uh, Dragonite, Metagross deals with it. Dragonite deals with it. We can have something that's slightly weak to Dragonite here, and we'll be okay, right? I like putting in things that have this big circle here because that means we get a hard beat by it, but we do hard beat it conversely. But I'm still scared of these Swampy boys, so we're gonna put Swampert in there. Okay. Now we're gonna look at these potential threats. It says Empoleon Escavalier. Okay, so Empoleon or Escavalier. I think maybe Escavalier might be a little annoying. That deals with a steel weighted. We are a little weak to let's say Charizard. That could be a Pokemon people use because people like fire types. Now, the reason why I do this is because when I put all these things that I'm scared of in a team, here's the best part of Team Builder. So, yeah, Metal Scar card, I don't care. But what this tells us is the potential threats against the team. What beats the things that I'm scared of? Garchomp beats it. We already have Dragonite that can beat it. We already have Melodic that can beat it, right? So there are a lot of things that can beat it, and we can just look at anything on this list. We want to look at things that don't have big X's, and for things that do lose, we want it to have like. So we're looking for anything that can fit in our squad that has light purple X's, right? Light purple X's, and can do generally what we want it to do. Okay. So if I look at Garchomp, big X, not good. Melodic, if I try to put Melodic in, the only issue I personally have about Melodic is A, Melodic is expensive, but B, I don't like the coverage. So if I wanted to use Melodic, I could. And if you wanted to put Melodic in your team for a little bit of spice, you could, because Melodic can win a lot of things. Your threat score goes down to 465, and now you're only, like, if you look at this right here, look at this with Melodic in here. Two things, everything has two things that can beat into it right here, right? And it's not until we hit right here for these 7 where there's a Pokemon that can beat 2 of our guys. And if you look at it, Metagross and Dragonite, there's 2 ties here. So there's only 5 things, 5 Mons here that can actually beat 2 of our guys. So from those 5 Mons, let's look at Magnezone, Garchomp, Heracross, Gengar, Cryogonal. First off, I don't think Cryogonal is going to be used that much. Even though I love it in Ultra League, I don't think it's going to be commonly used. And even if it is commonly used, I'm assuming right here in this matchup, which if we click on to open to a new link, it'll show us what this matchup looks like. It's going to assume that this guy can hit a Solar Beam on us. And you notice, even if it hits the Solar Beam on us, it's at 7 HP. So let's say that they go directly for a Solar Beam, but neither of us shield, right? We win. So for it to beat us with our Melodic, it will need to hit a Solar Beam, not use a it needs to hit a Solar Beam and shield one of our Surfs, or it will lose, right? So in my opinion, that's not really a loss. So Cryogonal, I'm not scared about. Okay, let's look at Gengar. Gengar, also a very scary threat. But the thing is, Gengar's supposed to beat Melodic and Metagross. Well, let's look at the Melodic matchup first off. And no shield situation, Gengar loses. Metagross in a no shield situation, so Gengar might be an issue, but Gengar's also very squishy, right? And if we do shield, right, obviously we win. If they put a shield, let's see how close the matchup goes. Gengar gets down to 21 HP with no energy. That means we can farm it down because of how squishy it is with our Dragonite. That's also not too scary either. Heracross, Garchomp, Magnezone. Magnezone might be common. Garchomp might be common, right? But our other guys can kind of deal with it well, and we could use our PV battler right here by just looking at the battles and see what our situations are. So if you guys looked at this team right here, Metagross, Dragonite, Melodic, that would be a solid team. Now, overview-wise, the safety, there are some matchups that we might have a problem switching, but like you can look at it. We look at our squad. Almost every threat I'm really scared of is either even or a win. For Metagross, Melodic can win, and Metagross can beat itself. For Togekiss, both Melodic and Metagross can win. For Dragonite, Dragonite can beat itself, and Metagross can beat Dragonite. So because we have the three core guys I'm scared of considered for, I would say this is a pretty good team. We have two answers to everything that's the biggest, most likely thing to see in the meta, right? And then beyond that, everything else out there, we got a lot of answers to things out there, and the things that we lose to, we don't lose by that too badly due to how good of an average safe swap melodic would be. I think melodic is generally going to be our safe swap here because if you look at it, there's nothing that a hard loses to except for like Electivire, right? In which case, Metagross Dragonite kind of deal with it after the fact. But and then even inside these ones right here, right? Potential threats, nothing that really hates out melodic. So I think melodic would probably be our safe swap. So when you guys look at this, right? Whenever you guys make a team, you guys want to have someone. Your safe swap should generally be a mon that doesn't have anything, like doesn't have that has the least amount of big blue circles as possible. Because the less big blue circle dots, that means there's less hard counters to it, meaning it's a relatively safe swap. When we look at what we want to lead with, it depends on what you're seeing. The more leads you see that are advantageous for you, you want to use that Pokemon a little bit more. But also more importantly, you guys have to think about like if I use a certain Pokemon for the lead, can the back guys handle it? So for example, if Metagross leads, right? If I use a Metagross lead and I run to a Magnezone, I could go to Melodic to take some of the damage because it'll wild charge itself to get weak, and then later the Metagross or Dragonite can kill it. If I run into a Garchomp, I once again throw Melodic. Melodic will chunk out the Garchomp and hopefully lead it into a rough situation. So this is a one shield, one shield. If we put no shields on both, let's see how bad it goes. Oh yeah, this Garchomp is just straight up going. Yeah, no shield. The Garchomp will lose. So that means the Garchomp has to. Wait, oh, whoops. No shield. Garchomp still wins, but it still gets kind of close. So I mean, it seems like you want to figure out what would lead you to an okay situation, right? If you guys feel like there's any key battles that lead you to a bad situation, you might want to switch up instead of melodic, you use something else, right? Because let's say melodic's not working out for you, maybe Garchomp, but then later you have the scary scared of Togekiss. I wouldn't use it. I would probably use like if not melodic, maybe Gyarados. If not Gyarados, maybe Vaporeon, maybe possibly Glaceon, possibly Feraligatr, possibly Mamoswine, Snorlax, Empoleon. All these things that don't have the big purple X on it, these are all options for me to put into my team and be relatively safe with it. And that's how you want to team build. When you're team building, you want to work around what you're scared of compared to your primary core, right? Their primary core was these two guys right here. So when you combine this with this, it'll let you figure out the last spot right there. Okay, so that's pretty much what we wanted to go over. I would say this is a pretty solid squad if you guys are using it. If you guys are scared of like safety or whatever, and you want to try something else, like you could pick another Pokemon randomly on this list here. So let's say you're like, oh, well, I don't have um. You can look at it. You're like, I don't have melodic built Garchomp. As I saw, Togekiss is scary. I don't want these big X's here, right? Let's say I have a Gyarados built, right? You can put Gyarados in there. And then later you can hit the rating. And you're like, oh, look at that. Bulk goes a little down because Gyarados is squishier. Safety goes a little up because Gyarados has more coverage. We still lose to Magnezone and Electivire. Now this is added to it. Like, oh, okay, that kind of sucks. Biggest threats, though. Magnezone is scary. Metagross is scary. Togekiss is scary. Looks a little scary. Might not want to use that. Oh, let's put in something else that people might already have built. We look at this list right here. Oh, look at Snorlax. Snorlax is right there. You put in Snorlax right here. Hey, look at that. A. Everything looks pretty good as score-wise, right? Meta score card. Metagross. We have two things to deal with. The Togekiss. Snorlax does pretty well against Togekiss because of the body slam spam. Dragonite. Snorlax is okay due to the body slam spam. Now, you notice there's not that many purple X's for Snorlax, but Snorlax is a really good safe swap because when he gets energy, that extra body slam will kill people, right? And if we look at the safe swaps, you can look meta scorecard 501, not too shabby. Togekiss is an issue. These guys aren't too that scary. And look at that, we don't even lose that bad to Hariyama. Wow, that's pretty amazing. And look, we don't have any big circle dots. Snorlax is a really good pick, right? And if you have all three of these built, this could be a good squad. And then you can run with it. You can see how it goes, right? And then later, if you guys remember what we taught before, when you guys were looking at Pokemon, you guys look at the rankings, right? And since we're in Master League and Premier Cup, if let's say you're like, oh, Metagross and Dragonite are my core team, but I want a good swap, well, maybe Metagross could be your swap, and then you can use a different thing that isn't a safe swap. Maybe you could look for a lead instead. What's a good lead? Maybe you guys could use Togekiss. How does Togekiss look at this team? Remember, Togekiss wasn't suggested, so I would think Togekiss doesn't do the greatest. But let's see. With Togekiss here, we get destroyed Metagross. That's already bad. I don't want to use this team. But we'll look at it. Look at that threat score, 542. Much worse than the two teams that we made already together. So it just shows you right away that just because something is really good here doesn't mean that we want to use it. Oh, look at that. Snorlax Shadow's there. That could be a really good lead, right? We could use Dragonite as a lead possibly, or our Metagross as a lead. So we look at what we need, what we think we might need, and then we choose accordingly based off of the information that we have, right? And if you guys do that, I think your team building is going to be a lot nicer, a lot cleaner, and it'll make things a lot better overall for you. With that said, this lesson's over. Class is dismissed. I'll see you guys next class period.